everybody, welcome back to Cinema Trip Reviews. I am Wyatt, and on this week's episode, we have a very special guest. We got Crystal Quin. How you doing this week?
Doing absolutely fantastic. What about yourself?
I am doing awesome as well, especially because we're going to be talking about 1982's Poltergeist, directed by Tobe Hooper. Now, I haven't seen this in a while. What's kind of your history with the movie here?
I saw it when I was very, very young. It was one of the first horror films I watched. That and Exorcist,
Oh,
and
okay.
I fell in love. It's actually definitely a big intro to horror for me,
Okay.
and I was obsessed after that. I was obsessed with that and Exorcist. Once I saw it as a kid, and I always knew at that point, like this is my shit. So
I wish I would have got into like this when I was younger because I was into like the slashers, like Halloween, Friday the 13th, and like The Exorcist, like you
mhm.
said. I didn't watch this until like later, like around like high school and everything, and it was like
Mhm.
way too late. I was like, why haven't I seen this sooner? Because like you said, I feel like this is a very great like introductory horror for like people that are just getting into it or like younger kids. There's nothing too crazy, like maybe outside of like the face scratching off scene. Um,
Yes.
but other than that, I think it's like somewhat tame. You know, there isn't like any really like too much swearing or like graphic violence or anything of that nature. I think it's definitely like a good introductory horror movie for like kids or teenagers, you what have you.
It will absolutely scare the shit out of them.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
It's a great
absolutely.
one if you're like, "Okay, we're past the goosebumps phase, and I'm ready to torture my child," just
Yeah.
to give him a couple nightmares. Um, but definitely there's so many scenes in this movie that really do freak you out, and as an adult too, rewatching it, it the effects don't hold up as well, so it kinda, like, throws you off a little bit, but it's still creepy. It's
Yeah,
still horrific and horrifying once you can get past that.
yeah, I mean, I was watching the 4K version of it, and it wasn't too bad at certain parts as far as the effects. The only one that I would say was really like stood out that was bad was whenever they walk into the room after like Carol Ann has been gone and everything's just spinning around, and it's like the CG like record
That
flying
was
through
the
the air.
worst.
Yeah, it looked really bad compared to everything else.
Well, what I do like about like we were saying though about like for kids to watch it, it was fascinating hearing about it was going to be rated R
Hmm.
and they ended up Spielberg actually freaked out and was like, "No, no, 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 we're not doing this rated R." He got it down to PG because it was before PG-13 was a
Yeah, it was
thing.
like a couple years before PG
Yeah,
13.
it was like yeah, only a couple of years, and I was like, "Damn, this being I couldn't imagine that being PG now."
Yeah,
There
exactly.
but it's not. It's just violence, really, is what it comes
Yeah.
down to, and yes, the face ripping off.
That's probably the one that really like pushed it to that R. And like Spielberg had to
Mhm.
pull the pull rank. He's like, you know who I am? I'm Steven Spielberg, man. I don't make R-rated movies. Like, come on, just throw me a bone
Mhm.
here. I'm like, all right, anything for you,
No.
Steven. It's fine.
That's exactly actually how it went in the producer room, I believe. It was just like, "Steven, you got it,
Anything
man,
for
fuck
you,
you."
Steven. But there was a lot of controversy apparently, like even to this day, like people aren't sure of like, did Tobe Hooper really direct this movie? Because like there's a lot of like hearsay about Steven Spielberg directed certain scenes, apparently did a lot of pickup shots for Tobe Hooper.
That's what he did.
Yeah, and I guess the story really stems from like a reporter that showed up to the set one day when Tobe Hooper was out filming like one of the main scenes and Steven Spielberg was filming. I might have been the one of those outside scenes towards the beginning with the remote control cars going after the
Mhm.
guy on the bicycle, and they just thought he was the only one there directing everything. So that really started from there, and then even to this day, like people are like, hey, it's secretly a Spielberg film, where it's like I don't think it is, but when you watch it, you clearly has that Steven Spielberg feel to it. I feel
Mhm.
like I don't know
Yeah.
how to describe it. Like when you watch like E.T. or some of these other his earlier movies, it just has that specific feel to it, and
Yeah, it
that's you
has
have that
the
the whole way through.
yeah, it's a very, cinematic it's not just a standard horror film, it's done in a very beautiful way
Hmm.
and done in a very classy way, and it does have the same feel of, like, E.T. because at that time, he was also doing E.T.
Yeah,
But and it has a the music is beautiful. I
yeah,
believe it's the same composer does this, like, Star Trek and a whole bunch of other things,
yeah.
and
Jerry
I know they were
Goldsmith.
yes, that's right.
Yeah,
And I know they were up for, like, awards for best music and best special effects, but of course, E.T. took it. Like, E.T. took so much away from this film. Like,
I
they're
know, right?
re-releasing it towards Halloween
I
to, like,
felt
redo
so
it.
bad for Toby Hooper because he was like, "Oh,
Oh,
now everybody thinks they directed this movie when I did,"
yes.
and then like Steven helped write this as well. He wrote the screenplay and the treatment for it,
Yep,
and not only that, he films ET like right after this.
yep.
And then he goes and wins all the awards that this should have won. And Toby Hooper's like, "Come on, man, you can't let me have one win here, please."
Well, some people were saying that Toby Hooper was going AWOL during the filming, and
Oh,
that's why they were
really?
saying yeah, it got so big that the Directors Guild actually had to look into this and actually open
Yeah,
up a case to find out if Steven actually directed it. And they swear he just did some pickup shots just to try and, like, cut some time and, like, just help him out once in a while because he did try and make a presence on set and stuff like that because he wrote it. He wants to make
yeah.
sure, like, his vision is also being done. Um, but he really Steven Spielberg actually really wanted Stephen King to direct it.
Yeah, I saw that like after Spielberg wrote like the original treatment for it, he tried to get Stephen King to write like the full screenplay and the script for it and everything. And I guess Stephen King's agent came back and just wanted too much money for it. And he's like,
That's what
it's
it
a little
was.
too rich for
Yep,
my blood. I'll do it myself. Me and
yep.
everybody, me and Toby Hooper will do it ourselves. But it doesn't feel like even watching some of Toby Hooper's other movies, like of course Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 and 2, Salem's Lot. There's some scenes, especially like when like the I think it's Robbie, the kid's looking out the window at the tree with the smoke. It has a very like Salem's Lot feel with the kid
Mhm.
like floating up in front of that window with the fog and everything. But compared to like that and Funhouse, it feels like a very different movie.
Yes. Yes, it absolutely does. Just like in the beginning, just you could tell it almost as a very Steven Spielberg though with the opening, I would say, with the
Hmm.
houses and stuff like that. Because it was actually he wrote it with the based off of like his own childhood. I think it was like Scottsdale,
In
Arizona he grew
Arizona,
up, so
yeah.
they were trying to like incorporate that. But yeah, Toby Hooper just decided to do something different, did something very, very cinematic and very, I think, very weird, horror, beautiful way. Like I said
Yeah.
earlier, it
Yeah,
is
like
good.
just like
I
at that
really like
beginning, like you said, where he shows like the wide out shots of like the suburban area. It feels like it's straight out of ET, which came out like
yeah.
2 weeks later. It seems like it's the same area where they shot ET. So my
Mhm.
guess is maybe he did. He just stayed on that same location and filmed everything. Is my guess, but
Instant clip.
like watching this, I mean, I think he commented after the Fablemans came out like this past year how he wanted to kind of maybe go back and make a horror movie eventually and scare people again. I was like, yes, I would love Steven Spielberg to kind of go back and do like a Poltergeist or even like a Jaws, like something new. Like we've been getting all this sci-fi stuff, and the Fablemans was great because it was kind of based off his own life, but
Mhm.
to him to kind of go back and go into like the horror roots again, that would be awesome if he ended up doing that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I would love to see that. I would love to see just a modern version.
Yeah.
I know they were talking about, who was it? I know they did, like, a 2015 remake, which I did not see.
I haven't seen it either. I heard it is
Yep.
absolutely terrible. It's abysmal from what I hear.
Yeah. But they're also looking to do another remake,
Oh yeah,
I
I th-
heard, and it
like the
just
Russo
they're
brothers, I think, were
yes,
attached
yep,
at one point.
yep, and then nothing. No one's heard anything since. I don't know
Yeah,
how I would feel about that.
I wouldn't either. I don't mean I don't know if they had any problems with the 2015 one, but I mean as far as like this original Poltergeist like trilogy, there was a lot of spooky stuff happening. Apparently, like, they're saying it's a cursed production, a cursed movie, similar to like how The Crow. Like, there's
Yeah.
been so many like they tried to get a remake going with The Crow for years now, and it's always something, and it just seems like it's the curse of The Crow, and it's like maybe the Russos are like maybe we want to stay away from the Poltergeist just in case. I mean, The Omen apparently was like another cursed movie as well. Some crazy stuff happened during that one.
Did you see Shudder's, Cursed Films?
I have, yeah.
It's it's really sad. It really, really, really is sad when you watch the Poltergeist one. There's a couple of them that were really sad, like, what was
Yeah.
it? The Twilight Zone movie, I think,
Oh
was
my
the saddest. I
gosh.
think I
The
cried.
helicopter
Oh,
and
and the kids,
everything.
oh my god.
Yeah, that's
It's,
terrifying.
like, so scary, super sad, but with the Poltergeist, they said, like, "Stop calling this a cursed film." People have literally died. The film, like, with, the daughter, like, with her boyfriend murdering
Yeah.
her, the young actress that died of a illness, and then 2 other actors, I
Mhm.
think, on the second one.
Yeah.
But they did say, like, what's her face? The one that plays mom. I'm the worst with actor names. She would go home.
Joe Beth Williams.
Yeah, I think it was her that said, when she would go
Mhm.
home, like, there'd be pictures that would be knocked off or something like that.
Yeah.
Things would be flying around the set. But, I mean, who knows if that's true or not? Maybe.
Yeah.
They were saying about the skeletons,
Yeah, they're saying
about
that
them
could
being
be
real.
possibly the cause of the curse, maybe, is them using real skeletons or whatnot.
I don't say that all the time. Cannibal
Yeah,
Holocaust isn't cursed.
that's true.
That was all real dead corpses. Not even skeleton, that was straight up dead corpses in
Yeah.
Cannibal Holocaust. But I don't it's just taking it and taking away from a tragic death and calling it a curse. Like, they say it in the, episode on Shudder, and I used to think of it that way until I heard them explain it. I was like, "Wow, this really is sad."
Yeah.
And they are absolutely right about calling it a curse film, about how it's taking away.
Yeah, because like you mentioned, Heather O'Rourke, who's absolutely amazing in this movie, is Carol Ann. She went on to do
Mhm.
2, and then, like, during the process of, like, making 3 and everything, of course, that's, unfortunately, she ended up passing at the age of 12. And like you mentioned, like, Dominique, Dunn, who plays Dana in the movie, like, it was, like, what, 5 months or a couple months after the movie released, or, like, her
Mhm.
boyfriend ended up killing her, and it was like, "What is
Yeah,
going
'cause
on?"
he went to a jealous rage, like, people were recognizing her,
Mhm.
and he just got super jealous and just beat her and killed her.
It's
It's
tragic.
insane. Super tragic. Super, super tragic, and saying it's a cursed film does take away from that.
It does. Yeah, it's a little disrespectful, like, to those people by labeling it that.
Mhm.
But whenever you look at it like a broader view, like with everything, not just those two in this movie, but throughout the course of the sequels with other people, something happens. But like if you look
Mhm.
at it a broader view, I guess it's easy to say it's a curse, but there's a reason all these things are happening. It's not like it's just happened because they made a movie.
Exactly. Exactly.
But this movie was made for 10.7 million, which isn't much by today's standards at all. It ended up going and making 121.7 million in total, worldwide
Yeah.
and everything, which was a huge haul. It was like the biggest movie of Toby Hooper's career.
Was.
I mean, nobody knows how much Texas Chainsaw made because that was like funded by the mob or whatever. Like, who knows? There's some crazy stories that go on with like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but that's a story for a whole nother day. Steven Spielberg, of course, produced it. This does star Craig T. Nelson, who was awesome in this movie. You got Coach in here as the father, Steve. You got Joe Beth Williams as Diane, the mother. You got Heather O'Rourke, Oliver Robbins as Robbie, Dominique Dunn, as we mentioned, and you got Zelda Rubinstein as Tangina, who's like I didn't know this actually, but she was a real life medium apparently before she became like an actress and stuff, which like that's crazy. That really like why they brought her in here for this part, I guess. And she's one of the most memorable characters in the movie.
She is. She's really known of doing character work just from her height, her voice, and stuff, so she was really known for doing character work.
Mhm.
But yeah, she was really on board and excited to do this role because it was something that she was able to connect with, and she's
Yeah.
so good in it. Oh my
Oh yeah,
goodness,
she's
so
fantastic. And then
good.
she went on and she even did like the sequels as well. And then she did
Mhm.
like a ton of voiceover work and stuff for like
Oh, yeah.
cartoons and animation. Drew Barrymore apparently was up for the role of Carol Ann at one point, and Steven Spielberg's like, you know what? I got another little film that you'll probably be better suited for here. So we'll save you for another couple weeks once this is done filming. Film ET and get your star out there.
What would you think if she actually played that role? Like, I'm so happy that she did not, and, like, that really, like, helped her career. I'm just so curious if it went the other way, like, it's, like, in a different universe,
Yeah, if they
you
like
know?
swapped or something,
Multi-universe,
if
yeah, literally
if Heather
switched.
O'Rourke was like her character in ET,
Oh god, I would hate that.
yeah,
Like,
it
she's
feels so weird.
perfect. Yeah,
Yeah,
Heather is just perfect for that role, her face, her just the creepiness, like, perfect. Drew Barrymore? I don't know, it wouldn't have
yeah,
that same creepy feel.
exactly. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's just like I mean, they're all children, so they do have an innocence about them. But like, especially like Heather O'Rourke, I don't know. It's just something like it just seems like it's that childhood innocence there, and it's like it's such a terrible thing to see what happens to her throughout the course of this movie, and like it starts like right at the beginning too. This movie like wastes no time in kicking off like what's happening with this family. It goes 0 to 100 real quick,
For as
and
long as it does not stop. Right
no,
when you think it's gonna end, it keeps going. You're like, gosh, wait, they're moving. Yay. You're
I
like,
know,
oh,
right?
haha, fooled you.
Fooled you. There's more story to tell. But
I'm not
like,
done.
as far as like ghost or poltergeist type movies go, this one, like, even watching it now, stands out so much better as far as like anything else that's been released even till this day. Like, you care about these characters. It's well written. The scares, as far as like the ghosts and stuff, are like, I feel like legit scares that like children would have or people would have like living in their own home. It doesn't take it to, I wouldn't say like a too outrageous like
Mm-mm.
place as like some movies would do nowadays, but I don't know. I think it definitely holds up today still.
Yeah, it plays off like more realistic fears, not
Hmm.
just of um poltergeists, but with the tree. I know that was Stephen King's actual, or not Stephen King, Steven Spielberg's actual fear. He actually, I believe it, he grew up with a tree outside his house and was always like, didn't like it.
Yeah, and he had like
Especially with the
he was afraid
clown.
of clowns as well. Yeah,
Yeah. And oh my gosh, this movie, I'm pretty sure, started so many fears of clowns.
right. And
And
it's like
it's
watching it. It's like, who would get their child that clown doll? Like, how big it is and how creepy it is. It's like, who would get their child that?
I also grew up with porcelain dolls,
Oh, okay.
and they would, oh my gosh,
Their
they
eyes
would
follow you
spend like
everywhere. It
all
seems.
over, yep, all in my room, all on my dresser and everything. And like I used to be a little nervous about them,
Hmm.
but then as I got older and creepier, I'd be like, they will do my biddings. They are demonic and they will be my army.
It would be like the dolls from like the first episode of like Ash versus Evil Dead that like attack him and everything.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm obsessed with Ash vs. Evil Dead. An amazing series. But yes, they are my army. They will do my bidding. And I would be like, I would talk to them and be like, if you guys are possessed, like, let me know.
Let me
We can
know.
help each other out.
Yeah, we can work something out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm a ginger. I have no soul. Like, it's not like you could take it from me. Like, we can work it
It would
out.
turn into like something like Carrie type thing. Like, I just imagine like how like Carrie walking down that street is just like you're walking down with just like all these like dolls. Like, the houses are burning and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
we could
that's
hop
somehow.
right into it though, into the
Let's do it.
movie. I mean, it starts off for a horror movie. It's a weird way to start off, but you can start off with like the Star Spangled Banner, like to open right up the movie.
Yeah.
It's weird, but that's
Very
another thing.
patriotic.
It's very patriotic to kick off a movie about poltergeist. One thing I didn't like, I wouldn't say about like the beginning itself, but there's kind of like two credit sequences in the beginning, because you get the first one here as it's kind of going throughout the house. You see like Craig T.
Mhm.
Nelson sleeping in his chair with the static of the TV on, and like the dog's just kind of going from room to room, just stealing food from people. Like, steals the chips from the daughter's room, steals like off of his plate in the living room or
Mhm.
whatever. You just kind of following the dog around the house, until you see Carol Ann come down and start talking to that TV, and you're like, uh-oh. Like,
Yeah.
immediately, not even 5 minutes into the movie, and it's kicking off. Uh-oh, little girl's talking, a
It's
creepy little
super
girl talking
weird.
to a TV. Something's wrong here.
Yeah, they really set it up to be more of a very all-American, normal household. Like, nope, this could happen to any family, is what it
Yeah,
feels like to me.
exactly. Especially like setting it in like that suburban type area. I think that
Yep.
definitely helps with it as well. That like it wakes everybody up, and they're like, all right, something's going on with Carol Ann. We might want to keep an eye on her a little bit here. Then it goes to like the secondary credits, like I mentioned, and it goes to like happy music. You're seeing around like the suburban areas. You're seeing the kids like chase the guy on the bike. Dude's just struggling carrying that whole case of beer on that bicycle.
I was like, all right, relating here. All right.
I wish there was like a backstory. Like, was this dude already hanging out at like watching football, and he was too drunk to drive? So he's like, I'm gonna take this kid's bike. They never explain it. You just kind of assume what's happening with this dude. But these kids just make him waste half that beer because he falls off that bike.
This is probably
And
the saddest part of the entire movie.
it's like, no. Just spray,
Yeah,
like
I
he's
felt
even carrying the cans that are just spraying all over the place. I could save them.
I felt so bad for him. You're like, oh, okay. This is life. Got it.
I don't know. I just like the relatability of these characters. Like, even when you
Mhm.
meet like the dad, he's just like, watching football with his buddies, and then like the channel keeps changing to Mr. Rogers, and I like his buddies. Like, who the hell is this guy?
Yep.
And you find out like his neighbors, like his remote works on his TV, and he keeps switching it off and on, which doesn't really come
Yeah.
back much at all. At any point in the movie, it's just a nice little like funny bit, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting just setting up like the neighborhood, I feel like, because there
Yeah.
is the underlining of the neighborhood, how close everyone is, or just the relationship. Because he does come back later. The neighbor comes back at the end and like
Yeah.
doesn't help. It's
Yeah,
just
right?
interesting throwing
It
those
just
characters in. Like,
I
oh my
noticed
god,
at this time, I was like, this guy, like, he saved her, and then they're like, nope, that's it. We're not like, that's all we could do.
yep, yeah, he shows up, I think, what, like 3 times in the movie?
Yeah,
Because they
whenever
also
they,
go over and ask, like, "Hey, is anything funky happening?" I
yeah,
guess
that's a
that's just
funny
to set
scene
it up,
too.
but oh, yeah.
But I wish they would have like they set up that joke with the controller, and I just imagine like later in the movie if it would have brought it back, like when they're trying to talk to Carol Ann through the TV or whatever, and it just switches to like Mister Rogers or like a football game or something, and then this neighbor's over there trying to watch his own TV, and it just keeps. I don't know. I think that would have been kind of funny, but maybe it would have ruined like a tension filled moment or something. I guess.
You just turned the entire movie into a comedy at this point, like, dropping beer, switching room, like, it has nothing to do
I
with
feel like you could
Poltergeist.
easily could have made it like kind of like a horror comedy, but I understand like they want to kind of lean more into the horror than the comedy aspect. But it's nice to have like those little like relieve like the reprieve areas of the movie. You're like,
It's
and you
making it
get to know these
relatable.
characters. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And I like the mom is one of my favorite characters in the movie because like she has like a whole like character arc of she loves this shit. Like as soon as she finds out about the ghost, she loves it. Like she's so excited and everything, and then it just drastically switches. And then she's like the hero. She has to go and rescue her child and everything. It's great.
And she is so beautiful too,
Oh
like,
yeah, she's great.
her and the daughter, though, like, I think they were only, they weren't
Yeah,
that far apart with age in
like
real
11
life.
years or something.
Yeah, I think she was, like, in her 30s. The daughter was actually, I think, 21, but in the movie, she says, like, "Oh, the mother is, 31 or 32 and the daughter's 16." I read it was like I was curious about that, and I was like, "They really don't explain it," but I don't think it was implied anywhere that it was from a previous marriage.
No, I don't. I
Just
mean, it wasn't implied. I mean, they don't mention anything like that.
no, and I was like, "That's, she's, birthed her a little young there."
Yeah, like you said, they did mention that like what is it? Craig T. Nelson's like 33 and she's 32. Like you said, like, but I was like, no way am I believing like Craig T. Nelson's like 33 in this movie. I don't believe it. But yeah, you're just kind of getting to see the family a little bit here. You find out like Tweety, their bird died, so they have to go and bury the
Gosh,
bird. And that's a
that's
sad
sweet.
scene where she's
Like,
like,
I'm about to flush him down the toilet.
they have to put it in
The
like a
daughter's
cigar
just, like,
box.
petrified. You're like, "Oh, no, honey, you're gonna get scared later on." Oh my god, this is nothing.
But they
You
like
think
put it in
that's
that
drama.
cigar box and like it's so sad. She like puts the picture of the family in there like to like the bird will never forget them, and it's like, oh, it's so sad. And then everything else that happens in the movie
You're
with
like,
her as well, it's like, oh man.
I'm a goldfish now.
Find out that Carol Ann and Robbie, her brother, share a room together. Robbie, he was just climbing that weird tree that's been in their yard. You see him climbing up there, but as night falls, they're tucked in the bed, and it's the storm's coming in, and the storm doesn't look great, especially on 4K. How it's rolling in across like the suburbs and everything. But I mean, it's a product of his time, I guess.
that's the thing, is like, it was up for best special effects.
Yeah. So I mean,
Like,
at that
it was.
time, it meant something.
But, yeah, it's very interesting, but I do love the fact that the dad goes in there and says about counting the thunderstorm, because that was
Yeah.
also very relatable as a kid, because I learned that, because 'cause I'm a '90s baby, I
Mhm.
learned that on Gullah Gullah Island, how they used to count that, and I was like, "Oh, yeah!" Like, I used to do that all the time growing up,
Same.
and I would be that kid, though. I would sit on my front. I still do this. I sit outside.
Mhm.
uh, One time it was actually not okay, but I love watching thunderstorms, especially summer thunderstorms is one of my favorite
Oh
things to
yeah.
ever do, and
Mhm.
the one time that I was sitting outside and the lightning hit a tree, like, the
Oh
tree that
really?
was right next to me, and the branches fell and, like, knocked onto the windows and busted the windows and everything. I was petrified.
Jeez.
I was like, "Okay, I gotta be a little bit more careful watching
I want to
thunderstorms."
watch
This was
this from
probably, like, 2
inside the
years ago.
house next.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, wait, lessons learned as an adult. Got it."
But this is where you get introduced to like what's going to be coming up later in a movie. Like you mentioned, like the clown is sitting there and he even like keeps covering it up. Like he'll put the shirt up over it and he's looking out the window at that creepy tree just sitting out and with the fog rolling by and everything. It's like, and I think of it every time they have curtains there. Like, I don't know why he just doesn't pull the curtains closed so he doesn't have to look at the tree.
Or curtains closed, and also put the freaking clown in the closet. Like, how long
Right?
has that been there? Like, he's lived there for a while, right? Like, he didn't just move to this house.
Yeah.
So now, why all of a sudden is this clown now starting you? Is this tree now starting to bother you? Like,
Yeah, like, or has it been bothering you this whole time? Like, because it
yeah.
seems like you just mentioned it to your dad about the tree. Like, as soon as you go and get him, and he comes in and he's talking to you. Like you mentioned about like the thunderstorms and stuff. It's like
Mhm.
he has that whole speech about like that tree's been here since we even built this like phase one of the the suburban projects that his company's building or whatever. It's been here way before that. It's like a protector. It knows like the lay of the land and knows everything or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to like kind of settle him down a little bit, but it's still a creepy tree. Like it's
Super
all
creepy tree.
bare. It's got weird lumps all over it. It's unlike any tree you've really ever seen.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they keep it for that, because that's a dead ass tree.
Yeah.
And usually, if a tree is that dead, you want to get rid of
Yeah,
it
you
'cause
want to
it's
get
not
it out of
that's
there.
not good stuff. Yeah. You're like, oh, if you're a developer, you should know better than that.
And I love that scene whenever, like, before he even, like, the kid goes and gets his parents, like, it shows you how cool they are. They're just chilling in their bed in the room. He's just trying to roll that joint. And he's doing a terrible job. He's getting it all over the bed. He's like, I need you to do this for me. And it's just like, they're just the coolest parents ever, just chilling, getting stoned. He's reading his, like, Ronald Reagan book,
Yeah.
watching TV.
Pretending like to dive, and so it sets up like such, you could tell like it's a close family, which is
Yeah.
so cool, because usually in like these types of movies I feel like it's the parents are like not looking at each other in bed, and you don't really see that relationship that often in movies.
Yeah, they're
It's
very
a lot
goofy with
more,
each other. It's very relatable. Like he's just there, sitting there making noises, like funny noises and stuff.
yeah,
And like
you're
when
cheering them on.
yeah, exactly. He jumps off the bed and he's like standing in front of the mirror. He's like before, after, before, after. But this is like a little like brief scene. Like if you're not paying attention, you miss it. Where like the mom mentions that when she was younger, she had problems with like sleepwalking and everything, and she thinks it could be like hereditary, and that could be why Carol Ann's doing it. And then she like has that throwaway line about like, well, maybe because the pool's unfinished, maybe she can go out there and fall in there while she's sleepwalking. Is like, it's just kind of hinting at what could possibly or like turn up later. Like Carol Ann doesn't go into the pool, but there is a point where she's like, the pool, just like that's where she could be at and everything. The kids counting the light and like the thunder and everything. It like he looks out that tree again and then just cuts to like them sleeping in their bed. Like, oh, it didn't work too long.
I loved that. That was like adorable. I was like, oh, it's such a like, yeah, it just really does set up for like perfect family.
Whenever they're sleeping in their bed, that's whenever I guess it's like every night
Right, that's
at like
right.
2 a.m. or whatever. They play the Star Spangled Banner or whatever. I guess every night.
Okay, this is a normal thing apparently.
It
Like,
was
all
the
right.
80s, so maybe they just didn't have cable on all night. So at a certain point, it cuts off. My guess
Yeah.
is, yeah, and that's where you get like the static and everything. Carol Ann wakes
Yep.
up, and you're starting to hear a little something coming from the TV at this point. The hand comes out at her and then shoots into the wall, and like the house starts shaking and everything. And that's like the next day
Remember
they're talking about like who sleeps through like a category 5 or 6 or like
exactly.
yeah, earthquake or something.
I just remember though that hand being scarier. And I
Yeah.
think it's also like because I watched it, yeah, the HD version.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is kind of silly. It felt like
Yeah.
almost like cartoonish and stuff. Like, but I'm like, all right, I feel it.
Yeah, for some reason, it was just my brain. I just thought it was later in the movie that came into the play, but it does look very cartoony the way that it comes out, and it's just kind of like smoke going around the room and
Yep.
then up into that wall.
And it sets up the iconic line, "They're
Yep.
here."
They're here.
Which is like everybody knows, like whether you've seen the movie or not, you know that quote from somewhere.
Do you think people remember that one, or "They're back"? Do you think people remember that one, or "They're back"? I feel like so many times people quote "They're back" half the time.
See, I never heard that one. I'd see like I
But there
hear
is too, when
they're
she
here.
turns
Well,
around.
yeah,
Really?
but I've heard they're here way more than they're back. Yeah.
I've heard so many people say that they're back. I'm like, you know that that's not from the first one, right? Like people forget that's not from the first. I was like, no, wrong one.
They can't be back if they weren't here.
Exactly.
But yeah, you have that breakfast scene like you mentioned, and like the mom even asks her, like, do you remember like saying that they're here? Like who's here or whatever? She's like, all the TV people. It's like,
TV people.
the TV people? What do you mean? And like that's when you're like during the daytime things are starting to be a little weird. Like the silverware's all bent. bent up, like the kid's glass breaks when he goes to get a drink of it and everything.
Yeah. I find it interesting that the mom right away is concerned. Like, she's just concerned from the very beginning when in so many other movies, usually the parents are oblivious or they're like,
Hmm.
"Oh, they're just being kids. It's fine. She has an imaginary friend." That's the half the time with the ghost stories anyway. Oh, it's just the kid's imaginary friend. But
Yeah.
this one, she's actually concerned right up front from the beginning, from her talking on TV, and she's like, who's here? Like, something's not right." And
Yeah.
I find that very interesting because you don't see that often either.
Yeah, and I like how it also like the roles get reversed a little bit whenever they find out, and like what I mentioned where she gets like really excited about the possibility of a ghost being in there and like everything, like how she's like has the chair sliding across the floor, and then she even
Mhm.
has Carol Ann slide across the floor with the helmet on, which is adorable. But like she's excited about it, but as soon as she shows like Steve, as soon as she shows her husband, he's the one that's like, okay, what is going on? He's the one that's like gravely concerned. Whereas like in a normal movie now, like the wife is the one that's like super concerned and wants to get the family out, and the husband just doesn't believe it, or he's
Yeah.
he's just doesn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, I love the chairs on the table scene.
Hmm.
I actually appreciated it a lot more when I realized it was one cut.
Yeah.
They took, what was it? The crew had 7 seconds because it was already put together. The chairs were already put together, so they have 7 seconds to get rid of all the chairs around it and put the, chairs on top. And
Hmm.
there's so many things in this movie where it's one take or they only had one take to do it.
Yeah.
And I kinda miss that stuff in films because it feels a little bit more real maybe, or just it feels a little special instead of, "Oh, we're gonna do this in CGI," or, "We're gonna cut and then redo something." It I just love that feel where it's like you can
Yeah.
see it's one cut. Like, you can almost feel the pressure on it a little bit more
Hmm.
through the actors.
Yeah, I mean, I'll always love practical effects more than like
Oh,
the CG or anything of that matter. Like it's just I don't know. It helps with the realism, and it just helps it like it just doesn't take you out nearly as much as seeing something like CG or animated on the screen.
uh-huh.
Like another thing now is like looking at Paranormal Activity or something. You would hear like a loud bang or something would get thrown
Yeah.
across the room, or making loud noises like jump scare
Mhm.
type stuff. And it's like you don't really have any of that stuff in here.
Well, it's interesting because it's based off of a real story. I know a lot of it was, based off of, I think it was in the 1958, I think, around in Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
There was a, poltergeist activity that took the news and stuff like that of this guy where he didn't believe his family, and it was at first were just bottles, anything that was a bottle, and he would hear it popping.
Really?
And they would just so that's all it really was at first, was just bottles popping and of any type of liquor. At one point, there was also holy water that was spilt over, um, and no one really believed it. The dad came home and he saw it. He was freaked out, called the police, and some stuff was, some things were moving around the house,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't that dramatic. And eventually, they did a few things. A priest came and blessed the house and apparently like got rid of it, and there was nothing after that. But a
Interesting.
lot of that was taken like as a little bit more subtle. It
Yeah.
wasn't like all of a sudden you'll see like in movies where it's like the cabinets are banging back and
Yeah,
forth.
exactly.
And
Stuff's getting thrown
yeah,
across the room.
it was more like kind of what they even say in this movie where, oh yeah, there was, what was it? A car toy took 7 hours to move across the room.
Hmm.
It was like a little bit more similar of that type of thing.
Or just like lights getting like a little brighter or dimmer or something like
Exactly.
that. I did see
Mhm.
that it was like somewhat kind of like pulled from like a real life type story. And there's also I saw there was like a Twilight Zone type episode that kind
Yep.
of that goes into a very similar situation of like someone going into like a different like kind of like a dimension, I guess, within
Yeah.
a house.
Yep. Yep. A lot of people thought it was taken from that.
Hmm.
Um, there's no they never talk about it being taken from that, but also
Yeah.
I'm a huge Twilight Zone dork, and there are just massive amounts of horror films. Like you can relate almost any horror film or really
Yeah.
so much is sci-fi TV based on the Twilight Zone. It's freaking brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah. It's
So,
definitely a way ahead of its time.
oh, way ahead. Way ahead. Like the original's phenomenal. Get into
Oh
the
yeah.
80s.
See, I
Those
haven't
we go
really
love.
seen the '80s one too much. The most of the ones I've seen were the original series, and of course, like the
Mm-hmm.
movie that they released eventually.
Yep. And then the new one that came out, wasn't the biggest fan of it.
See, I didn't watch that one either. See, I was interested in it because I heard like Jordan Peele like produced it or directed it a
Yep.
little bit. See, I didn't get to
Did.
watch any of it though.
I think it's worth watching just to
Okay,
watch it, but I the direction is definitely different and interesting. They definitely make it more modern. Um, it's definitely on the woker side, I would definitely say.
gotcha.
A lot of subjects are definitely forced a little bit in it.
Okay,
I think that like I couldn't stand the last episode.
okay.
Couldn't
See,
stand
I
it, and
hate
it's
that.
about Rod Sterling, and it made me sad.
Yeah, that's what I was
Like
gonna
that last
say. Like,
episode, like
Twilight Zone is very much like I feel like it'd be hard to do now. Like, it's very not just a product of a time, but like Rod Sterling and just like everything about it, just the black and white, the stories and how they were portrayed, and even like the theme music, everything. Like, it's hard to replicate that. Like that original series, you're not gonna be able to do that.
well, that's the thing. It's original. All the stories were so original, and right now you don't see that much originality. So many
Yeah,
things are influenced or copied almost word for word half the
yeah.
time. And it's really hard to do. I would love to see someone be able to take it and do something completely original, but I good luck.
And that's like the thing, where it's like the stuff that is being released that is original, not many people are going out to see it. And those are the people that are complaining, well, there's nothing original anymore. Why don't Hollywood do anything original? It's like nobody's going out and seeing this stuff that is being made that is like brand new or original. And it's like you got to go out there and support that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, support indie, support original, support things that are different. Don't go just because it has a big actor that you love in it.
Yeah.
Go experience art. Go experience something different. Support it that way. Especially I watched with the Chainsaw Awards and stuff. Like it's like
Hmm.
go support indie horror films because you're seeing horror films being more recognized. And maybe one day we will see horror, winning huge awards. We don't see that happen often. So much greatness is in it. It doesn't have to be, oh, blood and guts, blah, blah, blah. Like there is art to it. It can be fun and gory,
Hmm.
but there are like X and Pearl were phenomenal.
Yeah.
You can take it, and it's not just the what's it called? What does Joe Bob always call it? That he doesn't like the A24, like those types of film, like
Like the art
elevated
house.
horror,
Oh, okay.
elevated horror.
Elevated horror. Yeah. That's the term
Well,
for like the A24 stuff.
exactly.
Hmm.
And we don't have to go that crazy into it, but
Yeah.
yes, we need to support more horror, more indie horror, and just keep all of that freaking going.
Yeah, you can have both. Like I for one love like the A24 stuff for a majority of it. There are some misses in there, but I love it because it is so different and it's so like it has that atmosphere to each movie that you don't really get anywhere else. And then you have the other range of the spectrum where you have Terrifier 2 that came out and was made for barely anything and it was huge. And I love Terrifier 2, but like it's two completely different things, but they're so original in their own right though.
Exactly. I think we need all of that. We need the entertainment. We need some that make you think. I mean, it's like any other movie genre where
Yeah.
there's so many sub levels or subcategories to it. That's what horror is too.
Yeah.
We
It
want
it
people to pay attention to us.
Yeah, and it's so hard because everything that's mainstream that's being put in theaters is everything Disney or Fox or these huge studios is like that have enough money to bump all these other movies out of like these theaters or it sucks that just these big corporations just pushing these movies and like
Mhm.
these little distributors out.
Well, hopefully, I'm hoping Terrifier, because I know that they talked about now doing a third one, and I'm hoping
Yeah,
that
it's
also
been officially
pushes a lot
announced,
more
which is
people.
awesome.
Yeah, I hope it just keeps pushing people to do more and try more and keep going and
Yeah,
for it to be
absolutely.
supported.
And we talked about how much we love the mom in this. This is the only part in the movie that I was not on her side about, and that was when her daughter walked out of the house and were getting catcalled by the workers that were building the pool, and the mother just kind of laughed it off after she like gave him the finger and everything. I was like, you should go out there and say something, mom. Like, what are you doing? She's just like 16. These grown ass dudes are out here catcalling your daughter.
Yeah, I'm curious if because later in the film, like he's drinking the coffee through the window. It's like, do they actually know them though? Like, have they been around for a while? Like, do they work with her husband and
Like,
they've
yeah,
known each other
are
for
they
a
friends of the
while?
family or something?
That
But
was
even
the only way I
so,
could just
like,
that's the only way I could justify that because I was like, "How are
but
you laughing at that?" Like,
right? Because even if they were friends of the
oh,
family, they shouldn't be doing that to their daughter. Like, what are you doing?
nope, 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 and, like, yeah, she's underage.
Yeah,
Like,
it's very
calm it down,
creepy.
boys.
Very
Little
creepy.
creepy.
And I mean, of course you want to have like the funny part of her flipping them off and everything, but still like it's very like even watching it like the past couple times I've seen this movie, it's like, ugh, that's gross. It's just a gross scene. And like it's even weirder just to see the mom just kind of laugh it off and just continue on what she's doing or whatever.
I agree, I agree. Little weird, but you're like, "Okay."
Yeah, and I had to mark this down because it was just so funny. Whenever she's leaving the kitchen, Carol Ann's just sitting there watching the static on that TV in the kitchen, and she's like, you shouldn't sit so close; it'll ruin your eyes. It'll ruin like what does she say? Like, it'll ruin your brain or whatever. And then she turns it to like a war movie or whatever, and she's like,
It's
watch
like, "This
this.
is like a war thing." It's like, "Yeah, this is it's not good for your eyes," and then it's like, "Pew, pew, pew," like, just dead soldiers everywhere.
Oh, she says like it's not good for your eyes. It's not good for you or whatever. It's like it turns on a war movie. People are getting killed and blown up. And it's like, oh, that's good for her though. As like the mom's going around doing stuff throughout the house, you see the dog barking like at the wall in their bedroom where like the beam shot up through and everything. Husband comes home. She's so damn excited to show him what's going on within the house and
Yeah.
everything. She even has like the circles drawn up on the floor with the arrows. She's like, gotta like you gotta come see this before it doesn't do it again. And you could tell she's been doing this all day long.
Day,
All
mark
day
it
long.
out. Poor Carol Ann in the helmet.
Yeah, like Carol Ann's like yawning. She's so bored with it at this point.
Yeah, she's burning.
Yeah, she's like, it's she's like,
Oh
I'm
my
sorry,
god,
that's the last time.
it didn't wax the floor.
But yeah, like the chair slides across the floor and it just blew his mind. He's like sitting there searching for like wires and everything, and then she slides across the floor and he's just like I mentioned, the wife is so excited and he's just like, what is this? Like we need to figure out what's happening in this house ASAP. And that's whenever they go and talk to the neighbors to see if anything's happening with them. And this is a great scene because as the whole time while they're talking, the mosquitoes are just buzzing and he's like slapping themselves.
But what's so interesting is that jump cut.
Yeah.
That, do you know why?
I did see something about it because it cuts off like mid sentence while they're talking.
Yeah. It's because they had a whole scene, something about pizza. Carol Ann wanted pizza,
Like
something about
Pizza Hut.
Pizza Hut.
Hmm.
And the dad says about how much he hates Pizza Hut. This got out to Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut was pissed. And they literally cut it from it was never released. It was never released. No one's ever seen it.
Oh
And they
man.
literally just cut it because Pizza Hut got butthurt.
Man, that they need to have it like as a deleted scene or something now, or at least put it back in the movie. Like it's all these years later. Pizza Hut, get over yourselves. Like
Yes, Pizza Hut's barely even a thing now, okay?
exactly. Like if anything,
Right.
they should want their name thrown back in this movie for people that are watching it.
Exactly.
So people are like, oh man, Pizza Hut. I haven't had Pizza Hut in a long time or whatever, and
I
they go out and
know.
get themselves a pie.
No air, except that you can breathe. And you're getting pulled along. And maybe that
Like the next scene, it's like she's covering up all the bites on his face and
Yeah.
stuff.
Neighbors are like, yeah, we never got bit by a mosquito. And I'm like, what? All right. We get it. You're a man. Men don't get bit by mosquitoes, apparently. Okay.
But he's like scratched. He's like, stop scratching, it'll get infected or whatever. But this is where it goes 0 to 100 real quick. Because before we got just like little disturbances, like Carol Ann talking to the TV, stuff moving on the chairs moving across the floor and stuff. But here the son's just sitting there, scared of the storms again. It's storming again, and that damn tree just busts through the window and grabs him. I completely just go back to Scary Movie 2 because Scary Movie 2 parodies a lot of what's happening in this movie, especially like in this one where Robbie gets pulled out of that window and the tree's like eating him. Like the tree has like a mouth that is sucking him into, and like Scary Movie 2 it like rolls him up into a joint.
I think, oh my God, scary movies, like all of them are so underrated. They are so funny. I think it's the third one that's actually my favorite.
Oh
But oh my,
really?
I think that's the one with the ring where they make fun of the ring. I think.
Yeah, and signs and stuff.
Yes. Oh,
Mhm.
I can almost quote that movie. Completely.
See, I always been fond of the first two. Third one was good, but I always like those first two the best. But like it's been so long since I've seen them, and even just watching these scenes in Poltergeist, like it just jogs my memory. I'm like, oh man, I just remember that scene from Scary Movie. I haven't seen in how many years now.
Yes. Yep.
While the parents are out there, like he has to climb up that whole tree to try to pull his boy out of the tree's mouth. Carol Ann is up in her room, and the closet just flies open and just sucking everything in through that door. It's just a bright like light. It's like a portal in her closet, and like she's hanging on for dear life until like that headboard starts breaking and everything.
So much happening, so much chaos, and you're already like, oh shit.
Yeah, and as soon as they rescue the kid, they're like, oh, what happened to Carol Ann? Everybody's outside, like, oh, she was up in her room. I left her up there, and they go up, and she's gone. There's nothing in the room. Everything's like completely gone. Like it literally sucks everything. So I have to pull out the mattresses and like everything from that closet. And I like how they have that sigh of relief because you have that like person shape under that blanket. Oh, it's the clown. So, like they're searching around the house, and then the mother, oh, the pool. I forgot about the pool. And she, like Craig T. Nelson just straight like cannonballs into the pool.
Nope, not in the pool. Nope.
Not in the pool.
Oh my god, and the freak out the son is having.
Oh
the
yeah.
boy is having. He is this poor kid. He's never gonna be the same after this. Well,
No.
none of them are, but
And he's marked all over his face from like the tree the rest of the movie and everything.
yeah, I almost think he almost has a worse than Carol Ann. Like he is. This is like she kind of accepts it all. Like throughout the movie, like even at the end, she's like, "Yeah, we're good." The boy is just fucked up in the head at this point.
Yeah,
Like,
and then the mom goes through it in like the back half of the movie, and it's like, man, everybody's getting fucked up except for like the other daughter who's always out of the house. You don't see much at all.
Nope. You really don't.
I did read something that like apparently she only worked like 6 days or something on the movie, like which makes a lot of sense because she's barely in it at all. Like they just say like, oh, she's out staying at her friend's house or whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting that she wasn't even written in that much. It's like that at that point, why write her as a character?
Yeah, why is she
Because
in there?
This whole film is about a family, and yet she's not really like I keep forgetting she's part of the family.
Yeah, because you completely forget that she's there until like the very end, like whenever they're about to leave, and like she just gets dropped off by her friends, and like, oh, that's where the daughter's been the whole time.
You're just like, wait, is she still in the room? Is she like, wait, why?
Yeah, it's like, what was the point of even having this character?
I agree. It could have just been the two, and I think it would have been the same.
Yeah, but as like they're searching around the whole house, that's when like the son like hears her in the TV, and she's like, it's such a creepy scene, like how they add like the distortion, everything to the voice.
I can see you, Mommy. Where are you?
It's got to be such a like. Not only you lost your child, but you know that like you could hear her in a TV. So like, what the hell are you supposed to do at this point? Like,
Yeah.
They go and get the help from the doctor. What's her name? Dr. Lesh, played by Beatrice Straight, who is great in this movie as well. She's
Really
like,
good.
I always forget about her part, but she plays, I would say, a bigger part in the movie than like than Zelda Rubinstein when she comes in. Even though Zelda Rubinstein's like, she's more memorable as far as the movie goes. I think you know, Beatrice Straight played a great role in this as well, especially that little scene at night when everything's kind of settled and she's sitting there talking to the mom and Robbie and everything. She has like that flask of liquor.
But that is a really good scene because they're just so intense. Like everything is, this movie, I love the dynamic, especially in the volume where like when shit's going down. But in conversation, words are so important in this film, which is really great because a lot of other horror films, like you do see a lot of just things happening as more visual, like Chainsaw Massacre, obviously very visual, but they're able to really zone in on the conversations, especially when the conversations are so quiet. You're really listening and you're really paying attention and you're feeling the characters and the hurt and the craziness, but yet the comforting. It's really cool seeing the emotions, and the acting is fantastic.
You make a great point because, like you said, it's very comforting, just the way that she's talking to him and explaining everything. But it's also like it has a little bit of tension behind it too, just a little bit. But it is such a, and not only you also said it's quiet as hell too. Like I had to turn the volume like all the way up just to hear what the hell they were saying in that scene because they're just whispering.
Creates this energy. You're just like, oh shit, like Like it's like the calm before the storm is what it is.
Exactly. And you get some sense that some time has passed in between Carol Ann being missing and when the father goes, like they go and get the paranormal investigators. Because whenever you see them in the room talking with the father, like he looks terrible. Like he's like pale as a ghost. He's got like black all around his eyes. He looks terrible in the scene, and he's just explaining what's happening and everything, and they come and search the house, and it's definitely unlike anything they've ever seen ever.
Oh my god, like she's shaking with the teacup, like, oh my gosh. But the mom is explaining about how the dad hasn't gotten any sleep, and they're talking, and they're like, the lights are kind of going out, like the crack just goes across the table.
Yeah,
And
just
she's like,
slides
yeah.
across.
Or she's like, yeah, just wait. The lights are gonna do it. Like it comes in pairs. Like it's not big. Like
Yeah, like
good.
flickers, and there's like, oh, it'll happen again. Just wait a couple seconds.
Like you can tell, like she's sad, but she's also still entertained by this a little bit.
Yeah,
Like
trying to
she's
make the
not,
best out of it, I guess.
yeah, she's not scared of it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really seem like anyone is truly scared by any of this. Just the fact that they want their daughter back. It doesn't seem like there's much fear of what's happening. They don't feel like whatever is happening is going to harm them or hurt them or take their son, which is interesting, or the other daughter. And they just want their daughter back. That's all it is.
That's literally all it is. And there's another thing about this is it's not like any other real like horror movie or anything where it's just people just making dumb decisions. Like, oh, I'm gonna go into this room by myself or whatever. It's like everything in this movie seems like it's like planned out. Like they're doing this because of this. They're doing that because like it's the cause and effect of everything. And that's how great stories are written. It's not just, oh, they went in here because. Like that's it. Like
you hear a noise, the killer's upstairs, they didn't run upstairs. Like
Yeah.
they locked the door. They didn't want to leave the house because they didn't want to leave their daughter. That's the big reason they didn't leave. They want to be there in case something happened. But they're doing everything that they can.
And it even gets to a point where they're like, all right, we got to get the kids out of here. Like, we're just going to stay in the house. We got to get Robbie. And like, we got to only be here.
You're even caring about the investigators too a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
You're starting to get a little bit more invested because you see them caring so much about this family and wanting to help them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's like they brought him, like you mentioned, they brought him home. That's where like the lights are flickering. You see like we mentioned, the room just spinning, like the record even has like the compass on the record, and it's playing like a song somehow through the compass. I don't think it works like that.
The horse is like neighing and moving. That doesn't even make sense. Like how?
How does it work?
The horse are coming to life too.
And they even say like, yeah, we keep that door shut and locked most of the time. Like as you see later in the movie, like the wife just goes over and just opens it a crack and just like it starts roaring at her. She's like, nope.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, she starts like freaking out.
Yeah, that I would definitely say is the worst special effects in the entire movie. But everything else isn't the worst.
No, I think everything else worked for what they were trying to do for the most part. But this is where they're trying to contact Carol Ann. And that's where like they have like the portal that opens up in the middle of the living room, which will come back into play eventually, where it drops like the old watches and coins and change. And that reminded me, I don't know if you saw it, Nope that came out last year with like all the like stuff falling out of the sky. And it's like, oh, I can see where some of these other movies now are kind of pulling some of these aspects from like Poltergeist or some of these other movies. It's really cool to see.
A couple times in different films. There's another, I can't remember which one it was, but there was another one where there was like a portal and that kind of stuff happens. It was very interesting though that the portal just appears.
Yeah, no rhyme or reason. Like you knew about the one in the closet, but just for some reason there's just one in the middle of their living room that just comes down.
You're like, why is it dirt and watches? Like, why isn't it any of the kids' toys or anything like that? Like, what? Where did this shit come from?
You would think it would be some of the stuff like out of their bedroom or something. Like one of the numerous like Star Wars memorabilia stuff that was in there, because the whole room was just decked out in Star Wars because like it was like homage to George Lucas was Steven Spielberg's friend and everything.
Yep. Yes, it was.
But then you have like the loud roar coming from upstairs with the bright light and everything gets thrown across the room. And that's where like before the investigators were kind of shook, but now they're like, okay, this is a whole nother beast at this point. We got to figure out what's going on.
Did that roar sound familiar to you?
I did, and it happened to be the MGM lion because they were able to do that because this was made by MGM and everything.
Yeah.
And it comes
Yep.
back a couple different times throughout the
Yep.
rest of the movie whenever the
Yes, it
poltergeist shows
does.
up. The one dude goes upstairs. The one guy that looks like Cillian Murphy a little bit. I think it looks like just like him with glasses. He goes up and checks it out, and he comes back down like, all right, I'm not going back upstairs. Something bit
Yep.
me. And he has like those scratches like on his side and everything. They settle down for the night. They have all these cameras set up. They have like the monitors, even like different microphones set up for like, I guess there's like a motion sensor, like because the camera starts
Everything.
turning at the one point, which is like, even in the 80s, it's a little high tech for
Yeah, it is.
at the time,
Yeah.
especially
It's
for like
interesting, like, how
paranormal
you-
stuff.
Yeah, but it's like also interesting, like how did he just find this group of people?
Yeah.
Like, are they amateurs? Like, how do you know? Like they're legit. Like she's a a doctor, right?
She's
Was
like a
it?
psychologist, she said.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because she says
Because-
that. She goes, "Yep."
Yeah, she
Well,
even
she's
says
the
like
most-
there's no professionals in parapsychology. You just kind of have to get into it.
Yeah, she's like, I'm the most irresponsible woman at my age, or something like that.
hmm
But yeah, it's interesting of how they just randomly found them, and wish they kind of expanded a little bit more on their story. But I'm
Where they
sure if
came
they
from.
did, yeah, but I'm sure if they did, it would be a much longer movie.
I'm sure it reminds you of like it's another like a modern movie that took something from Poltergeist. It reminds me of what was it Insidious, where like the older
Mhm.
lady that has like her like group of paranormal, like the two paranormal investigators. It reminds seems like that was taken from Poltergeist a little bit too,
Annabelle and all that, like our
or like
right,
yeah, like the
Annabelle,
Warrens
they
or
have
something.
those. I would love to see like maybe someone create a story of them, like seeing how it was like the Annabelle and all those, like it did branch off with
Mhm.
that group. I would love to see that group of people from Poltergeist all of a sudden. It's like, what other things have they done? Like clearly this is the biggest thing,
Mhm.
and they were able to solve it. But like they've had to have worked with the other lady like more often. I want to see more. I want to see a spinoff.
Yeah, and you
be
could have it all set in like the 80s or 90s or
That'd
whatever.
be great.
It would be sweet.
Yeah. Stranger
Action.
Things mixed with that. Yeah.
That was another
That'd be great.
thing. It seemed like this seemed like I got huge Stranger Things vibes just because of like her being in the other dimension, contacting back to like to her mom and everything. It was definitely taken. Like Stranger Things took that out of there,
Yeah.
But this is where, like we mentioned, had that late night talk between the mom and the doctor, and she kind of explains a little bit about the ghosts. A little bit, like more explanation comes later from like the
Mhm.
medium that comes in, but she just mentions about like what happens when you die, kind of like what happens to your soul, and like some people's souls refuse the light, and they decide to stick around because they feel like they have unfinished business, or they just did
Yeah.
it wasn't their time. They just felt like they weren't ready to die. So they kind of explain like that's what ghosts are. But it comes into play like when like the medium says like whenever you die, you have to follow the light. The light's like the answers to everything, but some people refuse the light and they go off on their own path. And like Carol Ann has her own light that like everything's kind of distracted by and going towards her instead of like the light they're supposed to go towards. And then there's like a beast that's like holding her captive and everything. Whereas like it reminds me of Insidious, because Insidious you see the other side that they
Yeah.
go to and everything. It's not just set in the the real world
Yes.
where like
I
they
think,
could have went with that way with it, but they chose not
Oh
to.
yeah. I'm kind of happy that they did it. It could have been a totally different direction with that, but I'm happy with what they did. But in this scene, though, it's fairly sad listening to the brother saying about how, oh, if I die, can I bring my sister back?
Oh yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Like, can I meet her if I die? Like, he's like planning it, it sounds like, or he wants to die so he can help somehow. And you're just like, it's very heartbreaking and very touching.
It's something you would expect like the mother or father to say, but like to hear
Mhm.
it coming from a kid that young, like it hits a little differently.
It does. It absolutely does.
Cillian Murphy in glasses, he gets a little hungry, so he decides to go to the kitchen. This dude's rude, straight up, because he straight up pulls out a whole steak from their fridge. He's like, you know what? I know you probably had this saved for your family, but I'm just gonna eat it anyway. And so is the chicken and everything. But like that steak just
Oh,
starts like slithering across the counter
yes,
and like starts imploding upon itself, which is so cool.
yes.
And like the chicken that he's eating has maggots all over it. And that's
Ugh,
when he has to go wash his mouth out or whatever in the bathroom. And this is one of my favorite scenes of the movie.
love it.
And
I
apparently
love
this
it.
is Steven Spielberg's hands in
Yes, it
the
is.
shot.
So they had one shot to do this. Didn't want to mess it up, and they want it to be Steven Spielberg's like what he was looking for or
Hmm.
what he wanted um in this scene. So it's yes, that's why you can tell it's a different set of hands too.
Yeah,
You can have
exactly.
this, like the weird like at first it's like very natural, and then all of a sudden it's just like
It's
hands.
like Friday the 13th at the end where Mrs. Voorhees' head gets cut off. It's like what's his name? Tom Savini. That's his name.
His above me, I have his he made COVID masks.
Oh yeah, the Jason ones. I should have got one of
I
them.
have that, and I have one of them signed by him.
That is
I have
awesome.
two. One signed and then one just to wear.
I was eyeing them up for a long time. I should have committed and bought one.
Totally
But
worth
it's
it.
like that because that was his hands at the end of Friday the 13th. Like that's why like if you pause it or like if it goes in slow mo, like it's weird to see Pamela Voorhees' hands have like hair and all over 'em.
I love moments like that. Oh,
Yeah, and even know how like of course it's like 80s prosthetics and everything. It looks so good. Like the skull underneath and just pulling the chunks off into the sink. It's so gross. Like the bloody chunks
so
into the sinks. It's
gross.
so gross, but it's so cool.
I'm really happy that that stayed in there and that they didn't cut that out. It easily been cut out, to be honest, but
It could have, yeah, for
it,
sure.
it really does set a bit of a more of a horrific tone to it.
Yeah. It definitely does. And if I was that
Definitely.
dude, I would have been out skis. Like that dude stuck around. Like they mentioned at one point, like, yeah, he's gone. He's not gonna be coming back. But like he still stuck around the rest of that night. Like after he went through that, I would be like, nope, no, I'm out, bro. I can't do this.
Hmm.
Like the beams of light coming down and just like that weird, like tall ghost like apparition
Yeah,
that comes down. And it's so cool.
that looked good. That actually looked really good, and it was very pretty. Like no one's scared of it. Like everyone's more
Yeah.
shocked of it because
Hmm.
it's like it. I guess it just didn't feel evil or malice or anything like that. Everyone was just like, "Wow, this is beautiful. Look at all those souls. Who are all those people?" When they replayed
Yeah.
it,
It does have like a
and
certain beauty to it. Like the
it
way that it's
does.
shot, just coming down like that
Mhm.
spiral type staircase and everything. It's really cool.
Yeah, and it does show the difference of there's only one evil. There's just the beast. Everyone else is just lost souls. And they were saying like, wow, how lonely they are. And like you kind of feel for them too. You're like, shit, they're just lost and trying to find their way.
Whenever they look at the playback, that's when you really get to see them. They look just like old timey, like I don't know if they're like soldiers, but just like an old timey like clothes. Two different lines coming down the stairs. Like it doesn't look like one single apparition like it did when they saw it in person, but on
Yep.
video it's just like these two rows of just people filing down these stairs, and then they talk about where the watches and change come from, and it's like oh it ranges from like 100 years old to like a couple years old, and you're like
Yeah.
well that's not my watch, so where would this watch come from if it's only a couple years old?
Very
uh,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
They did that so well.
this is at the point where they're like all right, we got to get the kids out of the house. They straight up call a taxi and put the kid in it. They're like no, we gotta ship him out of here. The
Yep.
daughter's staying at her friend's house, I guess. That's like a little
Again,
throwaway line. That's their excuse to get her out of there, I guess.
excuse the entire movie. She's at her friend's. It's fine.
She's just at her friend's house.
Yeah. She's with the construction workers, actually.
They did have that throwaway line where like, oh, we're gonna stay at the Holiday Inn. She's like, oh, I know that place. Or he's like, what? It's like you're 16. You should not be talking like that.
No, no. There's some things that they say too. You're like, oh, these kids are kind of smart. Like
Wait
talk
a
about being
minute.
owned and like at the dinner table and okay. All right, kids.
The doctor just explains to the mom, just like, listen, like we can't do anything further here. We gotta go get some outside help. I will be back though. Like, don't worry, I'll be back and I'm gonna bring some help for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I like this scene too because Steve's boss comes and checks up on him because he's just been saying that he's sick the whole time, and
Yeah.
he comes in and is like, "There's monitors everywhere. The place is a wreck." He's like, "Yeah, I've had a cold. Like, you know how it is." And like the
Well,
piano's sliding across the room. He's like, turns around.
shoving down. Oh my gosh, no light. Oh, this must be a 300-watt. Boy, I'm really scared of burglars. Huh?
Yeah, the light gets super bright outside. He's just kind of just hiding all this stuff away from him. He even
Yup.
says about like, yeah, my daughter's been sick too, because he like the boss mentions about his like his daughter that goes to school with her or whatever. She's been out like a
Yeah,
couple
daycare
weeks.
or something. Yeah.
But he says that he has something he wants to show him or whatever. He's like, if he's sick, like the last thing you want to do is like take him out of the house to show him something.
Also very caring, obviously. We find this throughout the film. Like,
Yeah,
very
right.
caring boss who really cares about humanity and, life, not money at all. Got
Not money
it.
at all. No, not
No,
greedy at
no, no.
all.
Yeah, he especially has a lot of respect for the dead,
Oh
as
yeah.
we find out. Lots of
The
respect for the dead.
utmost respect. But yeah, he takes him up onto that hillside and he shows him the location of what would be phase 5. And he's like, oh, what, wouldn't this like huge, like, imagine yourself sitting in a living room looking out a gorgeous, like a window over this gorgeous view and everything. It's like, you could live here. We'll build a new phase 5 here. You can move up here. It's only 5 minutes away from your old house. It shouldn't be too much trouble. We just gotta, remove the cemetery a little bit. Like, he's like, what do you mean remove the cemetery? He's like, oh, we did it before, like back in the 70s. And like that would be the first hint. Like you see that he's like thinking about it, but he's like, nah, that can't be.
But it's so interesting. Like you're just like you're like, wow, this guy's kind of an asshole because you want people, if you're worried about people visiting, their friends and family, they could just go to the memorial park or something and visit them there. But he doesn't mention about moving the bodies or anything either
No.
in that
All he
statement.
says is just
Like, yeah, we're just
relocating the cemetery. And it's like, well, first, like, I want to know how you would even go about doing that. Because I feel like you would have to get approval by so many people to even just move a cemetery. You can't just move a cemetery like that. Like,
Most people do that though. Do that. And I'm like, I want to do it. That is one job you could not pay me to do.
no. And I feel like there just has to be so much red tape you have to go through to even accomplish something like that, let alone doing it 5 different times or how many times they had to do it to build these developments.
Yep, but money talks. So.
That is true. That is true. This is where you get to meet Tangina Barons, played by Zelda Rubinstein, who, I mean, like we mentioned, she's one of the standouts of this movie. Just like her voice is is great. Like the way that she's portrayed, she has those shades on the whole, like pretty much the whole time. Like she cares about the people, but at the same time, like you gotta listen to what I tell you. You can't question what I'm telling you.
She definitely has respect. She does have respect for the dead. But I love this or her line when she's talking to the dad. She's like, I'm talking to the living here. Like, what's going on?
And I like when she like asks him the question and he's just like sitting there and she's like, aren't you going to answer? He's like, I did answer. She's like, see, she said she's a psychic. I answered her in my head. She can't even like, she didn't know.
I thought you said this Tangina Barons was an extraordinary
I
clairvoyant.
am. I just don't like trick answers.
Yeah, they're like not really believing her, but she does such a great job in this. Yeah, the voice, everything is just it's perfect. And
Yeah,
they're like,
it's
you
so
have to trust her,
memorable.
you have to trust her, and like something's up.
She tells the mom, like, I may ask of you to do something that you don't want to do. Or it's like, what she say? It's not morally acceptable or something, but you got to do it. Like, you can't question me. You got to do everything I ask you to do. And this is where she goes down, like, the explanation about, like, the spirits are attracted to the light of Carol Ann's life force. Something evil is keeping her away from the spectral light, which everything else is trying to go to. So they got to find a way to get her away from what she calls the beast. Is what this apparition is called, I guess, this demon. So they try to contact her. The mom is just trying to, calmly talk to her. And they're like, well, they need a stern voice, like someone, you got to act like you're punishing her or whatever, scolding her. And that's when like the dad's like trying to get her to come out and she's like, tell her you're going to spank her. He's like, I've never spanked her. Like, I don't spank my children.
And there is these little things of comedy thrown in there to make it not super, super intense or anything, but you're also paying attention to the lines. It's not just a spectacle, which is really cool. Like there's more to this, like you have to pay attention to the story.
Well, she says there's many hearts to the house, but one of the main hearts of the house is the closet. That's like the entrance to, I guess, this alternate dimension and everything. So they come up with the idea of like writing on these tennis balls and then they throw them through the portal and then it comes down and through the living room and they're like all covered in like this purple goo. And they even throw like that rope through and it's like crossed through the dimension and everything. It's really cool, like an idea.
Yeah. And I just love these lines of when they're like, "Who's gonna go in?" And because they're like, the dad's like, "I need to go in." They're like, "No, we need someone strong to hold the rope."
Uh-huh.
And the mom is talking to the medium and be like, yeah, I should be the one that does it. She's not going to go to you. And she's like, well, you've never done this before. She's like, neither have you. She's like, all right, you're going in.
Let me go! You've never done this before! Neither have you! You're right, you go!
You're right. You're right. You go in. Sure. That was freaking hilarious.
She goes in and through the portal and everything, and he's just he gets a little too jumpy. He's like, I gotta get him out. I gotta pull my wife and everything out.
Yeah.
So he starts pulling a little early, and that's when you get the huge demon head that comes out of the
That was
closet.
really cool looking. That's actually, I think still to this day, that's actually pretty cool looking. But I remember as a kid watching this and being very confused if the medium was a bad person or not.
Especially in this scene.
Yes. And like even still today, I'm just like, wait, she is trying to help. Like you know she's trying to help, but she's like, don't go towards the light. But you said not to go for them to not go towards the light. I mean, I think I remembered it differently of her being a not good. Like she's like working with the beast in my head as a kid. But as I rewatched, I'm like, oh, that's not what happened. But
Yeah.
it is
Well,
a
just the
little-
way that scene's set up, though, it gives you a different kind of feeling towards her as like everything else. Because like whenever she goes in, you have that shot of her just slowly backing away, like she's kind of scared of it or something. And she backs into that wall, and you just have that shadow of Craig T. Nelson on the wall. But it's like it's a very eerie shot, and just like you mentioned, the what she's saying about not going towards the light and everything, it goes against everything that she was telling him before. So it does give you that feeling of like, whose side is she really on here? And also on top of like, okay, you can go, where she kind of tells the mom to go in there. Like, it seems like maybe she tried to get the mom, like tricked her into going in there.
Yeah, it's a little confusing there, but she is trying because she does yell at the dad, mean like, it's too early. Why are you doing? Don't do that. Don't do it. Like she's concerned now.
Not long after he pulled that rope, that's when they come dropping out of the roof in the living room there, and all covered in goo. And they gotta
hurry up, get him into the water.
Get him in the water, get him into the tub. And I like it's such like a breath of relief. You think it's over and everything. They're in the tub, and like even like the doctor and everything give them like their own family time. They shut the door. Like he's just happy to have them back. They finally woke up because they weren't breathing for a little bit once they put him in the tub.
Because like you're watching, but like Carol Ann, though, you could see her moving, like when they're wiping.
Her eyes are like fluttering. Yeah.
You're like, you could tell, like she's like almost kind of smirking. Like she's not good at play.
No.
You know she's not good at playing dead, unfortunately. Like she's not.
They probably
And then when
did
she wakes
a
up, it's
couple
like
different takes too, and like, well, this is the best we're gonna get.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, all right, well, she is a kid, so.
Yeah, not much we can do about that.
This house is clean.
Immediately upon rescuing their kids, we're moving the hell out. Boxes, get in the truck. Like, we're getting the hell up out of here. Not
Once
fast
again,
enough, though.
Yep, it's not. It's another realistic. Like, yep, they're doing the right thing.
Yep.
They're not messing around. They are making the right decisions. They're doing everything they can to.
It wasn't like, oh, everything's fine. We're just going to stick around. Like, the house is clean. Like, we're just going to stay here. Like, nope, we don't want to deal with any of these memories anymore. We're just going to start over. He says about, like, I got to go to the office. I should be back early or whatever. And he's like, this dude did not come back early because it's daytime. And it's like late at night whenever he gets back, when everything is already going haywire.
Yeah.
Like, the mom has the gray streak in her hair now from going into the other dimension, which is like, I guess that was the thing at the time because Nancy in Nightmare on Elm Street has the gray streak in her hair. Ash in Evil Dead 2 gets the gray streak in his hair whenever he comes into the contact with like.
Yeah, she goes, yeah, it's a little punk, right?
She's like, I'm thinking about keeping it.
I think looks good with it.
Yeah, she looked great with it.
Yeah.
But she mentions that like she remembers, but Carol Ann doesn't remember anything that happened while she was in there, that's great. That's the last thing you want your kid to remember or like grow up with, you know, that kind of trauma.
This is what trauma looks like.
The father says like, I'll be back. I got to run to the office quick. Like, he's like, I'm going to tell him to go to hell, but this time I'm going to give him directions. He's like, I'm not sure he's going to listen to you. Don't worry. I'll give him directions. The house is cleaned up pretty much. It's all cleaned out because they're moving. The mom goes up and takes a bath. She's going to dye her hair, I guess. She decides to dye it. The kids are just kind of playing in their rooms. And then this is another scene that's Scary Movie 2 spoofed as well, where the ghost is trying to get freaky with the mom in the bedroom, or like lifts up her shirt. and like throwing her all over the walls and everything.
Oh my gosh. I remember that scene from Scary Movie so well. That is absolutely hilarious. But it does have a sex appeal to it.
It
It
does.
definitely does.
Like from that first shot, soon like the shirt flies up and she's just in her panties and everything.
Yeah.
And then just throwing her all over the wall. It looks like Nightmare on Elm Street. Like wherever she's just like, what's her name? Tina getting thrown all over the walls.
Yes.
Just far less gore.
Just a little bit. Just a little less gore.
But while this is happening, that damn clown comes to life and starts strangling the hell out of this kid, which I did read that they did have a problem with this, that it did actually get too tight and start strangling the kid, and it took a little bit to realize he wasn't actually acting at that point.
Yeah. So yeah, he was those are real screams from him.
That's terrifying. And they don't really show it either, but whenever he gets the one up on the clown, he's like, I hate you. And he's like tearing the stuffing out of it.
I love those moments though in movies where it's not fake and they keep them in and stuff like that. Like that's part of Christmas Vacation, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. They keep some of that in where I think he actually like stubs his toe. And that's real. That's like real anger. Like those types of things, it's priceless. You kind of feel that.
One of the more famous ones is like the Django Unchained with Leonardo DiCaprio slamming his hand and like getting like cutting his hand wide open and getting blood everywhere.
Yep. But yeah, they said like the kid almost died because it was really choking him. So that's another sad thing for this movie.
Is it cursed? Maybe, I don't know. Bum, bum. The mom, she gets out of that room. She's able to get away from that ghost somehow, but that big demon ghost comes out of the door and like knocks her down the stairs, and then like everything's electrified. Everything she touches like zaps her across the room, and that's when she goes outside to try to get some help. She falls into the pool, and of course that's whenever we get the one of the more famous scenes of the movie is the skeleton, the real life skeletons coming up out of the ground.
She didn't know they were real.
Yeah, that's terrifying. And not just the skeletons, but you have like full-blown coffins just rising up out and just opening up, and they still have like the jewelry on them and everything.
So she was very hesitant about actually doing that scene because she didn't want to get in water with so much electrical stuff around. So Steven Spielberg actually went into I think it was Steven Spielberg that did it.
Yeah.
Went into the water and was like, I will be in here because if you get electrocuted, I'm being electrocuted. We're doing this together.
I feel like I've heard that about Steven Spielberg numerous times, like working with actors or children or whatever. He just seems like a genuine good dude. Like when he's working, he wants people to feel as comfortable as possible when they're making these films. He doesn't want them to feel like scared to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, which is fantastic because making these types of film, like just working on films takes so long, so much effort. Everyone's exhausted. Like you have to keep a good morale no matter what. When people are like, oh, this director, this actor was a nightmare to work with, everyone hates it, but you got to keep a good reputation. I don't care how famous you are and stuff, because that stuff gets around.
Yeah, I actually just read a recent story about Matthew Broderick saying he had problems with, was it John Hughes, when they made Ferris Bueller's Day Off and stuff. And I was like, that didn't, like, nobody really knew about that until now. Like they had, issues and stuff, but like nobody wants to go through that. But like Steven Spielberg is like, I'm not going to ask you to do anything I wouldn't do myself, pretty much.
Exactly. Like you're like, okay, that's kind of cool.
She tries to climb out herself and even slides right back down into the pile of bodies there. And then she starts climbing up that pipe, and then the neighbors finally somehow, like, they did something in this movie. They helped her out.
How did they not hear any of this though throughout the entire movie?
Screaming.
Nothing. You're like, okay.
They didn't come out when that tree was trying to eat their kid, and they were just screaming outside. They even look up at the window in the room, and like all the flashing and stuff's flying around, and the neighbors are like, oh, like I think something's going on up there. Yeah. They don't bother to help.
Yeah, she screamed, help me, help me, help me. And they're just like, nope, fuck this shit.
We'll stay here. Next time you see them, they're just sitting in the middle of the street outside their house later.
But I'm not gonna lie, I don't blame them.
Yeah, I don't know. It looks a lot like your problem, lady. I don't want to get it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna risk my life. Sorry, I don't even like you. You're not even a good neighbor.
But she
Maybe
goes,
if you left the football game on or something, we would have helped you. Like, payback's a bitch.
Yeah, straight up. But I love this next shot though, and she runs up into the house and she goes upstairs, and it just shows that hallway just like extends and it's like a never-ending hallway she's running down.
Mhm.
It looks amazing. And it's
Yes.
nothing like anything else in the movie either. Like they didn't do anything else like that.
It's just you're just now going through this hole of just weird shit happening. You're going back, like, you think the nightmare's over, but now it's the real nightmare. Like, now it's just everything is morphing and the wall, the door, everything changing, and you're just
The closet is like a straight up demon mouth at this. It's not even a portal. It's like a mouth.
so cool. Yes, it is so cool. I'm loving to see. I love the effects for this with the door, the closet. It's just it's alive. It's everything is alive. Everything's coming back, and it's now not taking no for an answer.
And she's just trying to pull them, like she's holding on to Robbie and Robbie's holding on to Carol Ann, and she's just trying to pull them in. And it's like, I understand you have like, you want like understand the process of what you're trying to do by like the chain of pulling them in, but I wouldn't rely on your like 10-year-old son to try to pull your daughter into.
No, especially the way they're holding it. It's like,
exactly.
you know,
And Carol Ann's like holding onto the bed too. It's like, let go. What are you doing?
yeah.
But like that last shot though, it gets me every time because like it's like an overhead shot of her pulling them out, but it's like they're just walking. Like she just walks them out. It's not like they're actually floating in the air or anything, but they try to like trick people with the way that the camera was angled and stuff. But as soon as like she pulls them out and trying to get out, that's when old Craig T. Nelson rolls up and he's like, "Oh my God, it's happening again." As soon as he gets to the door, the coffins are popping up through. Yeah, you get one of the most famous lines of the movie.
Yeah.
You moved the cemetery, but you left the bodies, didn't you? You left the bodies and you only moved the headstones! Why? Why?
He's freaking out. This dude, why? I love it. I love his freak out at the end of the movie. And the boss just doesn't know, like he's so like just like flabbergasted with what's going on in front of him.
I mean, I don't blame him. Like all of a sudden, there's coffins popping out of the ground. Yeah,
Yeah.
a little, like,
But the other thing I was wondering is like, it seems like everything's happening on this house, but as soon as they leave the house, that's like down the street, fire hydrants are exploding, like stuff's catching on fire. But then it's just the house that like eats itself and disintegrates upon itself. But like, what was happening to the rest of the neighborhood? Because I feel like the rest of the neighborhood's built on the cemetery as well, or was it just their house? Like, why wasn't anybody else going through any of these issues? Was it
only
just
thing
their
is-
house that was on the cemetery?
well, they say how it's a good amount of area was on the cemetery. So I'm curious if it was like that was just the first of many things where it's awakening more of the spirits. Because my whole thing is like, why is it happening then? It's like, is it
Yeah.
because they're making the pool? Like, and they're starting to disturb more of the ground and digging it up?
Maybe.
Is that the reason why it started?
Yeah,
That's the
because
only
that
thing I can
wasn't
think of.
happening to them before they started digging the pool. So yeah, maybe it was because they were actually digging up the bodies and stuff.
Yeah, they're
But they
starting
didn't-
to disturb.
But you think they would have mentioned about like, hey, we found some bodies when we were digging up your pool, man. Like, what do you want to do about
If you
this?
find bodies, just leave it. Just don't tell anyone. Just like let it
I
go.
mean, knowing those shady dudes that were digging the pool, maybe they just didn't say anything at all. They were just like, hey, let's get this out of here. He doesn't need to know
Exactly.
about this.
Mhm.
The other daughter shows up right in time. She gets dropped off and she's like freaks out immediately. She's like, what's going on? And they're already in the car, just like, get in, we're leaving.
Like,
Yeah.
just go. She's like not even in the car yet.
Yeah. It's like, what are you freaking out about? We just had to go through this. You just got here.
Yeah.
What are you freaking out about? They drive off and you just see like that. It was a cool shot. Apparently like the miniature or whatever they had was like 6 foot wide or something. And I don't know how they did that effect of like
It was
it
like a
just crumbling in
vacuum
upon
or
itself.
something. Yeah, it was like a vacuum or something that sucked it all up, and they only had one chance to do it. It was one
Oh,
shot.
wow.
Yeah, it was something about like it suction. It's something that they made it be able to like suck everything up and kind of like crumble on itself.
Yeah.
And yeah, they only had one chance to do it.
Just like
So-
a lot of the other stuff at the time, like
Exactly.
not just in this movie, but like any huge practical effects type thing
Yep.
like that. And I love just that last scene. They're all just, other than the teenage daughter, everybody's just like all dirty and just gross. They go to the Holiday Inn, they check in, and just, they go in, and like that last scene is just him wheeling out that TV. He's like, nope, not even risking
I
it.
love it. Yeah.
Not even risking it.
Yes.
And it just
Oh.
pans out on that TV, just on that on the balcony of the Holiday Inn.
And it's like on a really good song. It's like something with like kids in it, like singing or something too. And like an odd song it ends on. Like it's kind of good feel, but kind of creepy at the same time. Yeah, the music in it is absolutely phenomenal, and yeah, it definitely ends on a good song. It just ends and kind of feels good.
Yeah. I mean, they ended up getting their daughter back. Nobody really got hurt in any way. Like nobody got, killed. As a horror movie, most
There's
people
no
get killed in
kills.
horror movies. Nobody gets killed in this one. But like you mentioned, the music in it's great by Jerry Goldsmith because apparently they, from what I understand, they tried to get John Williams to do it, but he wasn't available at the time. But even like he has like Jerry Goldsmith has his own feel into it, but it also incorporates some of that John Williams sound, I feel like, and some of the lighter stuff, like lighter moments of the movie has like that John Williams feel to it. But whenever it hits that like the scary stuff, when that score kicks in, it helps. It helps with the tension and everything. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, you need good music in a horror film or just movies in general. Like music is so important. People don't even realize because half the time you watch a movie, I feel like a general public doesn't even realize there's even music happening. Ever like hearing it's like watching a sitcom without the laugh track.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't feel right. It doesn't set the tone.
Yeah, it doesn't
I
work.
mean, I remember taking sound classes in college and you take a scene and you play around the different music. It's insane. It's literally same exact footage, but the music truly sets it. And I feel like, especially for this film, it really does set that tone to where it's not like not over the top, like scary, but it's also not over the top, happy go lucky. Really, just it sets it right.
It's a perfect blend of everything at the right
It is.
time. And
Mhm.
like what you mentioned, it kind of reminds me of it was one of the like documentaries I've watched on Halloween where John Carpenter's talking about the music and he just remembers like it was crazy to him whenever he would go see it upon release and like people are covering their ears because they don't want to hear the score or whatever. And he's like, I never thought about it like that, but that's exactly why we do it. Like Halloween wouldn't be the same film without that score or anything.
Oh
It
my
wouldn't be
gosh, it
nearly as
wouldn't.
scary.
I don't know. That theme song can put me to sleep. It's so soothing to me.
Well,
It's
it's like
my
now,
dad's
yeah.
Yeah, it's my text message. Every time someone texts me or something like
Oh,
that,
yeah.
and my volume's on. It's like a little couple of those notes, and I'm like, yeah,
You put on like Laurie's theme and it's like a lullaby going to bed or something.
it is. Yes.
I do love this movie. It's one I don't watch enough, I feel like. That's why I had to go and scoop it on 4K so I could watch it more. But like it's been quite a while since I've seen it, but watching it again, it definitely holds up. It stands out more than any other really ghost or Poltergeist type movie out there. Now, I haven't seen the sequels nearly as much as the first one.
Yeah.
I've maybe only seen them once or twice. I don't really remember too much of them other than like the one set in like a high rise. And of course you have that creepy old dude in the in the sequels, but I don't know if I don't remember too much about them, but this is the one that I always come back to. This is the one
Yeah.
that like you don't need the sequels as much. This is like it's an open and shut movie. Like you don't really need any more as far as the
No.
story after this.
Mine was the same way. I've seen the sequels once. I never felt like I need to go back and rewatch them.
Mhm.
I like this as one movie as it is. I mean, the other they're not bad. Two and
Yeah.
three are they're not bad at all. It's just this is my favorite one, and I think it's such a masterpiece. I really do. I like to consider this just as a horror classic, horror masterpiece, even though there's no deaths, there's not much,
Yeah.
there really isn't any gore or anything, but it's done in such a great way. It's a good classic, and it's just very original, and not much I've seen has been able to even really compete to something like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how you know it's a good movie, especially if it's like, because they didn't have PG-13, but you have a PG horror movie that's still standing up there with some of the best horror movies of all time to this day. And like, it's so refreshing to go back and watch movies like this that like, even so, no, some of the like some of the CG and some of the stuff, special effects aren't great. I feel like a majority of them still hold up. And like we mentioned numerous times, this is one of the best ghost / paranormal phenomenon movies out there that you're ever going to find. And you don't need any like blood or gore. I mean, you have that one scene, but it's not controlled by it.
It's not even really bloody. It's more just
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
a bloody gory thing. It's just
It
kind of
doesn't even
something
last that long.
wow. No. It's good. Like I know a lot of people that are like, "Oh, I don't want to watch a horror movie unless it's rated R," or a lot of people are very against even like PG horror movies. Where
Yeah.
I love kid horror films and stuff. Like Goosebumps, like rocks my shit. It's so good. Because there's a lot of creativity, you can play around with it, and
Mhm.
just in a child's mind kind of sense. But I think this is just such a great film, and
Yeah.
that didn't need to be a spectacle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the perfect blend of both Tobe Hooper and Steven Spielberg at the same time.
It is.
You know, even though Tobe Hooper did direct it, and he did direct it for everybody that thinks Steven Spielberg did. But I think even though, because Steven Spielberg helped write it with Tobe Hooper and everything, I feel like that's where you really get like the character development, and you care about these characters through the whole thing. 'Cause that's really one of the hardest things to do, especially in a horror movie, is getting you involved and to care about the characters that are going out. Because most of like slasher movies or horror movies, like, yeah, I'm just waiting for these people to, get knocked off one by one, or just like, I hate this person, I'm ready for him to die type thing. It's not like that at all. You want these people to
No.
succeed. You want these people to come out on top at the end.
You really do, and I think that's actually really. I love horror films that are like that, where you do care. Like those tend to be some of my favorite types because you're invested. If you're not invested, it either has to be amazing kills, lots of spectacle, lots of fun to watch, or you care about the story.
Mhm.
Or it's both. It could definitely be both. But if you don't have either one, like you have to have it, or the
Yeah.
movie's just it's not gonna be that great.
Yeah, if you don't have much of a story, you
Right.
better have some good set pieces or like, crazy stuff going on, and vice versa. This is going to be an easy question to answer. I normally do this for like older movies like this. Would you give this a buy it, rent it, or miss it rating?
A buy it, rent it, or rate. Oh, buy it.
Yeah,
Buy
that's what I'm saying. It's an easy question to answer on this one.
It's funny because like I thought I had it on DVD already, and I don't. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna rewatch it. And I was like, okay, I can rent this, but I was like, no, why wouldn't I just own it for like a few dollars more? So
Yeah.
legit, buy it.
Yeah, I highly recommend going out and buying it too. This is definitely a horror classic you need to have added to your collection. That is the episode here. Where can everybody find you, Crystal?
I am a co-host on Hack the Movies, which is another movie review show. We do tons of different types of movies, not just horror, but I tend to be on a lot of the horror ones. Because that is my favorite genre. So that's always fun. Hack the Movies, or find me on any social medias. You really just type in Crystal Quin, and Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. So
Yeah, I'll have all your links down in the description as well for anybody that wants to find you. As always, make sure to like, share, and subscribe here to Cinema Trip Reviews. Go check us out on Twitter, Instagram at Cinema Trip Reviews. And also anywhere you get your podcasts. We're pretty much available anywhere you find your podcast, so drop in and leave us a good review there. And just want to give you a special thank you again for joining me here tonight talking about Poltergeist. I really appreciate it.
it was so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah, no
Absolutely.
problem. I had a blast doing this, so I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. And I would hope to have you back another time, talk about some horror movies.
I'm down.
All right, everybody. So that is this week's episode. We will see everybody next week.